Look, we spent a good time on Villa, which is what I wanted to do because I wanted to get
No,
your inside thoughts on it because, like I say, I've been enjoying them. So that was decent, man. But we'll finish off talking about coaching a little bit because obviously that's how we came across each other. And how long have you been doing it for altogether? Even if you say when you first started volunteering.
I started coaching at 16. So the soccer school I used to go to on a Saturday morning and the club I used to play for on a Sunday had a big soccer school up at our local park. I started there about 3, 4 years of age.
Right.
And was lucky to have some really good coaches. But what they started to do is, as you get older and sort of when you get to 16, 17, 18, not every league continues depending on what league you're in with the club.
Yeah, of
So
course.
they asked if I wanted to go in and coach, or I reached out to go and try and do it. My brother did it, and it was £10 for 4 hours of work, but it was quality. Got up on a Saturday morning, go set the goals up, and you have a 3 hour session to go and do, which I thought was great, and I was really excited about. And then sort of stopped when I went to university. Played very, very socially at university. But enjoyed my time playing for them, and I still got probably some of the best friendships I've got around out of that.
Yep.
Then in my second summer, my first summer at home I didn't enjoy, but my second summer in particular, I went out to the States to a camp in Pennsylvania, a residential camp called Trails End. So they'd bus kids in from some of the more wealthy New York suburbs. They'd fly kids in from Chicago and Florida, and they'd stay on the camp for, I think it was 5 or 6 weeks of summer. So my coaching really took off there. I went over with the ambition. If I like this is what I'm going to go and continue. If I think I can handle the kids and manage the kids, I think coaching's where I was going to go. Because originally the plan was I was going to be an airline pilot. That's what I wanted to do my whole life. I went to a private school in Oxford and went and did the entrance tests twice, just to make sure I pushed the pass envelope on one aspect. And I got to the final interview and they were like, look, for the experience you've got and the age that you are, having a 19-year-old fly a 737 isn't probably something that people are looking in for. Go to university, go and get a degree and see where you fought, which I hated at the time because I thought, I'm here, I've invested, I've done it all, I want to do it, then why aren't I allowed to do it?
Yeah.
Then it turned out university went really well, going back and then I had 3 summers at Trials End where one, I was just a general counsellor, going and playing everything from lacrosse and going in the lake with on the boats and stuff and playing every sport and dodgeball and the rest of it, to running their soccer program for the next 2 years. Came back and finished university and I was adamant I was going into football. So it just started from there really. I went and volunteered at the West Bromwich Albion Foundation through a friend from school who was quality, is a very good mentor for me and introduced me to people I still work with today. And then to do all that, I had to find other work. So I was working in William Hill as many hours as I could, or getting a Christmas job at Next just to sort of fund going and coaching.
Yeah.
Get it. I didn't have a car or a license at the time, so I'd work in the morning, or and get a bus start in the morning, get a bus to go and work at Next or go work at William Hill, finish there, get straight on a bus and then a train to go and do the Albion Foundation thing. And I did that for about 2 years or so, and I got a full-time contract into running the Birmingham Communities League, which was a great project. Worked with some really good people there. It was a league start. It was the league started by the county FA. They ran their funding as far as they could go, so they needed to give it to someone else. So we took it over. So it's sort of the new immigrant communities, at-risk kids, to offer affordable football.
Yep.
Affordable adult football. And some of the communities we were working with, we had a big Kurdish population. There was a Ghanaian team we were involved in. They don't have the same set of values and norms in running a football league or a football club like we might normally think of. So they needed extra guidance and support to do that. So we ran sort of the back end of it and bits and pieces. So that was a really good introduction to football as well. And did that for 2.5 years. Then the government changed and our project was seen as a mental health luxury, not a necessity. So the funding stopped and moved out to the States. So I've been in the States since 2016.
Was that the first time you went there? Is it? I thought it was earlier than
Yeah,
that.
no, I moved out with a club in 2016,
Right.
as in Boston for 3 months from the May to the August, and then they sent me out to California, to San Jose, where I met you.
Yeah. And
Yeah, and then that's pretty much been it. Then moved down to Los Angeles a month before COVID started.
class, man. That's
It's been a
it's
journey.
yeah, it has been. It's just you know, I was saying this to you before we kind of hit record on this, like a angle I'm kind of wanting to go on at this because I've obviously done it for 10 years of my life is starting to speak to people like you that do coaching and talk about it, and you know, like you kind of starting up your own thing, which we'll get into a little bit. But it was a big part of my life, and I think it's a lot more, especially when you do it with kids, right? It's more than just coaching them football. There's so much more to it that I think that it would be good for people that are thinking about, you know, having a career in it as a teenager or whenever, that they understand that it's a lot of commitment, right? Like it can be exhausting, it can be tiring, but it's also extremely rewarding. But you have to understand if you're going to do kids, you know, if you're going to go and you're going to focus on adults, it's a bit different. You still need to know people, but if you're going to do kids, you better be ready to make sure that, you know, you're able to, you know, take care and almost like help kind of these kids grow up as well when you coach them. It's a lot of work.
There's a lot more to it than just putting the cones down and
Yeah.
thinking of what your session is and thinking of the tactical, technical aspects of the session. There's so much more that goes into it that I don't think even some of the administrations within the clubs or the parents sort of get. But you can tell when you see a good coach, you can see the response it gets from the kids, you can see the response it gets from the parents.
It's the same at pro level.
Yeah, exactly. And end of the day, you're working with human beings. You're working with people that have good days and bad days. The great thing working with kids is, number one, they're brutally honest. They'll tell you if they don't like you, or they'll make it very clear that they don't want to know today.
They
The
definitely
second
will.
thing is they're so excited to come to play and to be part of it. There's no politics involved. There's no nonsense involved when you're on the grass with the kids. It's great. Like you said, rewarding. It's a very fulfilling job. There's a lot that goes into it, and I think lockdown's been really good for me in terms of coach education. I've tried to eat every little bit of coaching knowledge I can possibly, and
Yeah.
again, it's not so much being where does the cones go in this type of session. It's listening to, dealing with players and understanding the relationship with players, and especially with kids, it's being able to see the world through their eyes, not your own. We
Yeah.
don't control their world. You're very much invested into theirs. You've got to try and build into their pictures what you see and do it with them, not for them.
I think that you know, you mentioned you know, you've been doing a lot of coaching, you know, research while in lockdown. I think that's one thing, one side of the coaching that I, you know, don't know if regret's the right word, but I probably should have done more on. Like, you know, if you're wanting to get into coaching, my advice would be do as much research and knowledge as you can. Get your badges, but the badges aren't the end all and be all, but they are massive for getting your foot in the door anywhere, right? Like it's like having a uni degree. If you have that piece of paper, it just makes the conversation easier to start with. But and that's probably the side of where I let myself down, and I was actually you know, told for a long time in my coaching time out in Cali that you know, the badges weren't what I was being evaluated on as a coach, which I actually did like, because I thought, okay, great, it's not just about the piece of paper, but you need to have that, because when you want to move on and do your own thing, or move to another club, or try and get a job at this university coaching them, whatever it may be, you need the piece of paper side of things. And I think that can sometimes be overlooked and also underlooked. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Again, the piece of paper gets you in through the door. I should have put more effort into, especially in the US, going through the US soccer courses with a bit more urgency. But the flip side of that is, I think there's the informalness of some of your coach education as well. We were very lucky at Almaden that we had John Devine with us.
Yeah.
a guy who's been at Man United for 10 years as an academy director is the perfect mentor. We had a couple games of golf, and I'd sit there like a kid, like poking, asking questions. What's this like? Who's this like? Because he's still good friends with Alex Ferguson. He's still good friends with a lot of people within the game, Rennie Muhlenstein and people like that. For me, as a footballer and trying to be a bit of a coaching geek, I couldn't ask for anyone on the face of the planet better. And I owe a lot to John. And I think the people that that have worked with him would probably say the same things as well. His enthusiasm for the game, his understanding of it's not just understanding the game, it's how to teach that understanding to kids, which is huge. And that goes into the research. I was fortunate to be getting a university degree in football from Anglia Ruskin as well. And that's really kick-started my thinking differently about the game, moving very much away from, right, I'm going to do this tonight and I'm going to try and get this out of it. It's asking why I'm doing this and how I'm doing this, reflecting on some of the consequences of what I'm doing, the accidental consequences to what I'm doing, and being really able to form the brain side, the understanding of where learning comes from. Is so important. I think as a group of people, I think we overcomplicate a lot of the coaching stuff. I think it's simpler than what we can make it at times. In particular in the States, the one thing I have seen quite a lot from, I think it's part of their sporting culture that things get broken down into technical elements. Baseball's obviously a massive game here, and there's a lot of sort of throwing and catching, and without that soccer context or that soccer culture that happens quite naturally in Europe and South America, I think a lot of programs I've seen get broken down into its individual technical elements, where it's not that type of game. It's I think one of the best quotes I heard about football is, it's like a maths class, but instead of the teacher trying to get the kids down to sit and think about angles and distances and all the rest of it, you've got to ask the kids to get up, take the desk with them, and run around the field doing what you're asking them to do at the same time. It's such a hit on the senses and a hit on your intelligences that you can put the cones wherever you want, but if you're not understanding how learning happens in kids, then you're not going to make the impact you want. But then with that goes with, if I know what a kid wants and I know how a kid learns, I can go and impact their lives a lot more.
Yes.
There's been tons of research about it. I think from the Aspen Institute, the 4 things the kids want to do most when they get involved in youth sport: they want to have fun, they want to be with their friends. Competition's actually important to them, not so much winning. And there's a 4th one I can't think of on the top of my head. Those things, if you can elicit those 3 things, those 4 things in every session, you're on a real good foundation. That's before thinking about any of the technical stuff.
Yeah, man. I think that's fantastic. I couldn't agree anymore. You said something there about, the game is the game sometimes easier than you decide to make it. But I even think that watching like some of the professional stuff and what the discussion nowadays, like the cool thing is to talk about the tactics and the philosophies, and that's just, and the data and all that, and that's just one side of the game that is important and is good. And by the way, looking back now, personally, I actually didn't really enjoy, the tactical side of it and all that as much as I thought I would have. I enjoyed, like you said, that there's just something about the game that you just have a feel for it when you're playing on the pitch. And obviously as a coach coaching kids, you have to work out, how to get the best out of those young kids. But you're spot on. The game it is complicated, but it's also quite simple, right? It's a tough one to get the balance on. But what have your thoughts been on? Obviously you've been in America 5 years now. Like what did you notice in the difference between coaching in England and then coaching in the States?
It's a difficult one because I wouldn't say I did a lot of team coaching at home.
Right.
I worked, like I said, I worked with the West Brom Foundation, as Villa's Foundation as well for a little while. I worked with a couple of community interest companies. One was to sort of fill in between sort of your Sunday league club and your academy, which was really good to be part of. Some great people to work with there. I think John, who was there briefly, is now one of the heads of Wolves' academy.
Of course.
John Hunter Barrett, like just really, really good people to work with. But like I said, I didn't do too much of the teams thing, and that might have been good for my coach education because it just allowed me to go and figure out how do I deliver a fun, enjoyable session with as much learning as I can fit in without it being boring.
Yeah.
But I think the biggest difference I know, and it's probably, this is an overgeneralization, and I'm sure every person in the States has heard it, is that the country just isn't as engrossed in the game with what it is in South America, Latin America, Europe.
Absolutely.
And it's not just for the sake of just getting up and watching a game or anything. Like that'll it's the whole thing, like I spoke about earlier with my first experiences in football, is that it was before school, it was during school, it was not eating lunch at school to go and play more, it was playing with older players, it was going to the park and playing. And this is probably one of my biggest frustrations, is that in the States now it's just so, everything's professionalized. I'm not sure it's better than what it was in maybe the 80s and 90s when we had it, since a huge influx of British coaches or European coaches, and the creation of some of these mega clubs and super clubs that are going around. That again, they have their own pitfalls and downfalls, but I think everything's so professionalized and it looks good. It's great to rock up with an Adidas shirt to practice, and I've got $400 worth of gear on me, but I don't think there's that real level of ingrained understanding and knowing what the game is and how the game is. I'm not expecting a 7-year-old to be able to tell me about it, but to rock up and say, or just to go and copycat, how many kids would you see, or would I see in the round of a week that are going to go copycat what players have done in the week? Personally, I don't hear that many or any at all. Like even last week, I was just asked a question. He really, like, my son's just started playing with you, and he's thinking about, he wants to be a defender. He likes defending. Is there anything he should do? And I'm just like, watch the games. Find a role model to go and model yourself on. Go and watch as much football as you can.
Absolutely.
Because it's not so much about going. You're not going to create an elite footballer. Like you'd hope to, and success for me isn't being able to hang my hat on, I got X amount of players to college or into the program. That's not where I find fulfillment in the game. The fulfillment for me is I've taken a kid who is eating daisies and can't tie his shoes on day one, or is crying her eyes out, and then 10, 15 years down the line, they're still in the game, they still love the game, even if it's not football, still involved in sport.
Yes.
And they still want to be involved in sport. Because I think, going back to some of that research stuff, at the age of 12 and 13 in the US, there's a 70% drop in sport participation. And there's some arguments whether that's because they pick a sport and they're doing less of multiple sports. But there's a lot of research to show that they're just not playing at all. They just don't want to be involved in sports participation. It's because of, on the whole, and it's a critique for myself and yourself when we're at our clubs, they just don't love it anymore. They're not part of an environment where they enjoy it. They don't want to be there. So why would they? They've got other things. They got Xbox they can go and get that initial success and that initial fulfillment from. They don't have to go and travel to Arizona during a pandemic to go and play in a tournament that makes absolutely no long-term difference to their life at all. It's just a bit of a vanity project, in my own opinion, but that's where we are. It's very over-professionalized here, and quite honestly, in certain aspects, it's a very big vanity project.
Yeah, man. No, I think it's like anything in life, right? There's going to be people that do it, and they do it the right way, and they do it for the right reasons, and there's going to be other people that don't. And I think that could be here, that could be America, that could be anywhere. But I think you're spot on. The biggest thing that I'm sure we had many of these debates over a few pints in the Brit, right, with all the other guys about the biggest thing that you have to try and change is the culture. And, it's extremely difficult. I mean, near on impossible, to be able to shift that. But what you said about making the kid just, whether it be, that the kid's not even playing football anymore, just still in sport, 10 years from now, it might be lacrosse or baseball or whatever they're doing, right? I completely agree with you. That should be what your goal is to spark that interest in the kid and have them stay, and if it's the football, even better. But if it's something else, that's what our jobs are, right, when you're doing that thing, in my opinion. So I think you're I think you're absolutely spot on, man. What do you like to kind of finish up and wrap up? First of all, what are you like? Explain what you're doing right now, like your own little thing that you've got going on. So like people that watch it understand it.
So again, a lot of this is sort of based on who I am and what I'm a part of.
Yeah.
Going back, like I said, going back to home, I was working with. They were like charities, but they're not charities. They're sort of the projects to support within the local communities, the community interest projects, and some of where I am now comes from that. I think sport is such a great vehicle for kids and people in general to support so many other facets of life that
Yes.
we just need to be a bit mindful of that. And it just comes from my background and my experiences. And I think grassroots sport and a kid's first introduction to sport is so crucial in all of that. Like, and to grow that passion, that love for whatever sport it is, like we just said.
Yeah.
So that's sort of where I wanted to step. Again, the joy for me isn't so much I got so and so to X college or Y club. It's fantastic for them. That's all them. That's nothing to do with me or you as a coach. That's no reflection on our personality or our ability as coaches. But I think our thing is to set up an environment that they go on to love sport. So that was my jumping off point, is that I want to be part of something that, number one, I can be proud of, but number two, is impactful. And then number three, people, as cringy and as David Brent as this sounded, look back and think, Coach Matt was class. I really enjoyed that. Like, I'll always remember Coach Matt. And that's what I had growing up, sort of thing. I had
same.
For a club I was in there soccer school from 3 to 18. I had really good coaches and people around me. Sort of, my mum worked as hard as she could for us and couldn't always make it to the games. But then Martin, my coach, always made sure I had to lift to games and training. Always made sure I was all right. And it's not so much the football I remember, because we had periods where we were very good. We had periods where we were absolutely hopeless and we should have played a different sport. But it's the people along the way that makes the difference. Like walking to go and coach on a Saturday morning, having one of my old coaches hang out the window as I walk past the road and just be like genuinely interested and asking how I'm doing. Like, it's the people along the journey that make the difference. So that's what I wanted my own thing to be. I think I lost a little bit of that at a previous club, and I lost my own way about what is the priorities here. And I think it can be easily done, sort of thing. You're working in companies that
massively,
the last club, $2.5 million of revenue a year from youth sports, sort of thing, and there's a lot of pressure on you to keep that up. And I got into sort of the last year I was there, and I just thought, I got into football to wake up and bounce out of bed every morning. My mum was a nurse for 35 years, and it's some nursing, absolutely something she loved, but really got to was sort of some of the admin stuff, and where she didn't lose her love for it, but when times became difficult, wasn't so much the nursing, it was the people in and around it. And I thought, if that's going to happen to her and something she's so passionate about, I've got to make sure whatever vocation I choose to go in, this is right for me, and I'm going to get up and bounce out of bed in the morning, whether it's good times or bad. And that's where I got to my old club. I woke up and I was like, I saw a text message from 6:30 in the morning, or I was getting a text message at 10:30 at night, and I thought, there's no way this is the right way to be working. But then the bigger thing is, this just isn't right for me. So again, my experiences to what I'm doing now, again, broader context. It's not just throwing a badge together and throwing a website together. If it doesn't come from the core of yourself, from your however you want to explain it, then it's just not going to be worth doing. So that's where I started, and that's what I love to do. I love being in the grassroots. I love going and doing sessions and doing classes with kids that have never played before. The excitement to know that you're going to come across a different character every day, and they're usually jovial. I did a class at the weekend, and I was exhausted at the end of it. Like, I had 6 3-year-olds coaching, and it's their first ever class of soccer ever. Like, no thing about it. And it was rough, man. There was tears, there was tantrums, there was running off. There was loads of stuff going on. But then by the end of it, when I sort of calmed myself down and we got to the end of it, and I looked back, I took a bunch of kids. 2 or 3 of them didn't want to play, ended up playing. 2 or 3 of them were able to go and play and score goals, and understood a simple idea of, right, that's a defender. We stay away from the defender and we go to the goal, and that's the thing that gets me out of bed. Like, that's the stuff I love.
Brilliant,
and that's
man.
what I want to do. And that example is just to sort of paint a picture of that's what I'm aiming for. It's not about some of the things we just mentioned you can get lost in. It's to pass on the passion, to pass on the love for the game, and just to make sure that everyone's first contact with sport is a positive one and they can take with them.
Brilliant, man. Two things there, actually. First of all, have you got like a name for it, or have you got, or no?
SoCal Youth Sports
Okay.
is the name of it. So SoCalYouthSports.com. The whole name is SoCal Youth Sports Solutions. And then
Cool.
based in Los Angeles County at the moment. But it's going really well. Lots of positive feedback so far. And again, I'm now bouncing out of bed at 5:30 in the morning, loving life and the challenge of starting from nothing. When I decided to go for myself, I had maybe 10 email addresses to go and reach out to people. And it just went from there, sort of online for about 80 kids. Keep going at this rate. 100 kids within the program in the first 3 or 4 months is a huge success. But again, it goes back to that impact thing, is that there's a greater impact on what's going on. And a lot of that growth has come from not sort of using Facebook or marketing or anything like that. I put a website together, but it's based on the word of mouth around. Yeah, it's just that organic thing, that natural. A parent knows when their kid's happy, and if you can provide that, it's a great jumping off point. If you can get them to do the football stuff in the middle, then great.
Absolutely. I think no, that's class, man. And I think yeah, I don't. As you were talking there, I was thinking about this in my head, and I don't want to have to say this, and I shouldn't have to say this, because you're the first person I've kind of had this conversation with. I will. So when people listen, they understand. But you know, everything you've just said, and we've been there, both of us, is, you know, in any line of business, is people will sell you that, but when you actually get into it, that's not what it's about. And the reason I thought of having you on is because knowing you and, you know, speaking with you, and I'm not just saying this because you come on here and had this chat with me, but I know for sure that you're genuinely doing it for the betterment of the kids, right? And of course, there's a part of you that wants to grow yourself and have the business do well and do, of course there is, right? Or else why would you start it? But the core value of it is that you want to set something up where, like you say, you bounce out of bed every day, you love it, you're wanting to help the kids have a passion, whether it be in football or not in football. So I just think it's important. I think that people need to make sure that they're picking the right people to do things with. So I know it'll go well for you, man. It definitely will. It definitely will.
It's gonna be a good challenge, but very challenging. But it's gonna be a good challenge, and just see where it goes with it. So far, so good.
Class, man. Absolutely.
I'm enjoying it.
I've got 2 questions that we'll finish off with here, man. My first question for you is in the least, if you can simplify this first question as best as you can. If it's a long one, that's fine. But what do you think is the most important thing, like a coach should have? Like what would that one thing be to help kids?
I think I said it earlier. You've got to be able to see the world through the eyes of the child you're dealing with. It's not your world that they come into. I heard a coach say once, when the kids come to me, they know they're going to work. And I thought that's the polar opposite to how things should be. You've got to, again, understand the child. You've got to have the child at the centre of everything. You've got to understand how they learn and what they want from sports. And again, it's those three or four key things: being with friends, having fun. And if you go down those lines, you won't go far wrong. So I think the main thing for a coach is you've got to be able to empathise. You've got to be able to look at the world through a child's eyes and understand that. I don't think until you get that understanding, you don't get the impact that you could have. You could still do some really good stuff, but I think that long-term impact is a lot harder to to gain.
I agree, man. I think, like you said, I kind of knew that was going to be your answer, but I wanted to double check. Absolutely. Last question, and then we'll wrap this up. Is who is your favorite player of all time? So it doesn't have to be. It might be a Villa player. It might be someone else. Who's your favorite player of all time?
Dennis Bergkamp is an absolute madman.
Great
He's
choice.
a different level of brain. Zidane wasn't far away. I think Zidane had a little bit more physicality about him. He was able to do a little bit more, but for the sheer brain of Dennis Bergkamp, I read his book. Just different world altogether. What he could do with a football, but again, his book was a really good read. I'd recommend it to anyone. All started simple surroundings. It wasn't going to training and getting coached by Ajax necessarily. It was ball against the wall. It was playing against older kids, playing in the street, playing in the park. That really molded who he was. He was smaller, he was slow. So he really had to think his way around the game. And that was, again, just to see what he can do on a pitch, and that Arsenal team, different world.
Yeah, mate. Great answer. I love that. Solid answer. And like you say, a player that had all the things you just talked about, a player that had like a true passion, like you say, for playing the game. So that totally makes sense. That's it, man. That's all I've got. I think that was absolutely brilliant. I enjoyed that. Me and you'll stay on for a couple of minutes after this, but if anyone, whoever listens to this, and certainly if you're in the Cali area, but definitely LA, check out SoCal Youth Sports, and I'll post some stuff up on the Insta, and I know you're going to repost this too, so people can give it a little listen. But yeah, man, thanks so much for coming on and having this chat with me. And like I say, everything will do well for you, and I hope it does. It'll go well.
No, thanks, Matt. I really enjoyed it. I've never done a podcast before, so this is a real nice introduction. Thank you very much for having me.
Brilliant, man. No worries. Hopefully you get to go on and do some more, man. Thanks again, Matty, for coming on. Appreciate it.
No worries, mate. Have a good one.
Cheers.